Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Complied Out of a Ticket. A few years ago, I parked in a paid parking lot, but forgot to buy a parking ticket. When I came back a few minutes later, I discovered an $80 ticket on my dash. While I was frustrated about my own forgetfulness, the ticket itself was fair. However, I came to discover that the amount they had charged me was not. Before leaving the lot, I noticed a small detail on the terms and conditions sign at the entrance of the lot. It said that a failure to pay for a parking ticket would result in a $70 ticket, not the $80 that I was charged. I know that those signs essentially create an implicit contract upon entering the lot. Therefore, the company was technically violating its own contract by charging me extra. I appealed the ticket, stating that I would be happy to pay the agreed upon $70, but it was rejected. I then reached out directly to customer service, explaining the same situation. They rejected my request to pay the valid $70 because their ticket amounts are non-negotiable. I realized by their own words, they are the ones attempting to negotiate the price by charging me an extra $10. So I called up the supervisor of their claims department. She was already aware of this dispute and immediately attempted to shut me down, saying the signage is not up for discussion. I reminded her that their company's policy states that ticket amounts are non-negotiable, and that given what the terms on the sign stated, they were trying to negotiate a higher price. Once again, she shut me down, stating the signage is not up to discussion. The rest of the conversation went something like this. So, where can I escalate this from here? There is no more escalation. Next stage is court. Seems silly to go to court over $10, don't you think? Yeah, it does. Okay, well, I'll begin the small claims court process over the non-negotiable price issue then. Okay, I was having fun at this point, and was fully ready to start taking legal steps over this $10 on a matter of principle, and knowing that if I did, the company would immediately cave. Before doing that, however, I sent one final email to the vice president of the company. I explained the whole dispute, explaining the signage, their non-negotiable policy, and how the appeals supervisor told me my next step was to take it to court. I offered them the opportunity to resolve this civilly before going onto that stage. Not even 3 hours later, I got an email back, stating that my ticket had been fully cleared as a courtesy. As an added bit of pettiness, I replied thanking them, and CC'd the appeals supervisor. I then directly addressed her, telling her that this is how easy it could have been resolved if she would have actually addressed the signage issue. The next story is called Drop Everything. This happened several years ago, while I was working as a waitress at a chain restaurant. There was this insane manager, whom I had to work with on several occasions. She was young and thought she knew everything, was quite trashy, and was sleeping with one of the higher-ups, who was married, whose wife also worked at the same restaurant. This manager, let's call her Mindy, was always on my case about everything. I was one of the few shift lead servers who knew what they were doing, knew how to make the restaurant money, and had many customers write great reviews and say wonderful things about me. I knew how to do my job, and I knew how to do it well. Mindy always singled me out for things when things weren't even my fault. I would always just take it, because it wasn't worth my energy fighting about it. She was the only person in the whole restaurant that I did not get along with. I had a great rapport with bartenders, servers, cooks, back of house staff, and other managers. One day I came in to start my shift, but was quickly pulled into the manager's office by a different manager. He wanted to bring to my attention that Mindy had stated on my past shift that I was on my phone and not working hard. This was not true. I never carried my phone on me, because it was a distraction. I didn't have room in my apron. My jeans did not have pockets. And honestly, I didn't want to have it on me. I mentioned this to the manager, and he gave me the benefit of the doubt, but said he was going to keep an eye on me, as cell phone use had been becoming a major problem. with several of the servers and bartenders in the past few months. One shift a few days after that was busy. I had a full section and was set with a party of 12 who all ordered beverages from the bar with water. I grab a tray, fill up the water and hand the glassware to the service bar in the kitchen area. Once all the drinks were on the tray, I slowly started to lift it to get it situated as it was heavy. Mindy decided this was the best time to yell at me and tell me she needed me to run the food that was up at the expo line, where she was standing and expediting the food. I took a second to look over at 2 other servers who were leaning against the wall, much closer to her, on their phones. I said, "I'm a little busy, can someone else help?" She snapped back at me and said, "I told you to do it, so you need to do it now." At that moment, I honestly didn't even care anymore, so I looked her dead in the eyes, smiled and said, "Okay." I literally dropped the tray of drinks I was holding on the ground, walked over the broken glass, crushing the cups under my feet, grabbed the plates of food and asked her where they were going while keeping the smile on. The look of horror on her face, the phone-dwelling servers' faces and the cooks' faces were quite priceless. Once I delivered the food, I went to my party of 12 and apologized to them and told them I dropped the tray of their drinks and I'd be right back with a new one, still with that smile on my face. Once my shift was over, Mindy pulled me into the office and explained what I did was not okay. She was going to write me up for it, so I had to sign a document stating I understood why I was being written up. I refused to sign it before speaking with other management. There was much more discussion in this conversation, but it all boils down to, she said I would be fired if I didn't sign the write-up document at that exact moment. I still refused and said I would speak with the GM about it tomorrow morning, on my next shift. The next morning, I explained to the GM what had happened and stated that I was working, while others were on their phones. But Mindy singled me out. I also asked him to check the cameras to see the incident take place. It was so satisfying to physically see myself drop everything. After lots of discussion, the GM said there's no problem here, ripped up the write-up and told me to continue being the hard worker I am, and I never had to work with Mindy again. The last story is called Not the Supervisor. I am the CFO of a smallish company. Charlotte is the administrative assistant and Tom is the CEO. I served as the assistant CFO for a few years, where Charlotte and I both reported directly to the CFO. I was somehow at the bottom of the totem pole between Charlotte, the CFO and myself, despite my title and pay. I received the work no one wanted to do. I went with it because I knew one day I'd be her boss. That day eventually came a few months back, and things have only gotten worse. Charlotte has always considered herself a financial expert, despite not knowing the bare minimum of accounting. When the time came for us to create our official organizational structure chart, showing who reports to who, Tom tasked Charlotte with it, as the things here are very straightforward. When I got the final chart, I'm outraged, as I see that below Tom, instead of it being just myself, I see she has included her name as well. This was already approved by Tom and officially published. The audacity this woman had to think an administrative assistant is the same ranking as the CFO was baffling. But she also brown noses Tom, so I'm not surprised he approved it. Now comes the good part. I mentioned this chart to several groups we worked with, and they couldn't believe it. They are all aware of her incompetence and all want her gone, as she affects their business. I decided that if I'm not her supervisor, then I don't need to check any of the work she does. I let this go for a few months. I leave all of her mistakes. Finally, the auditors come. They find numerous mistakes, causing all of our public financial data to be incorrect. At first, they came to me, wondering how it could be so inaccurate. I then gave them the system data, showing that it was Charlotte who made all of the mistakes. They continued to push though. As in previous years, the responsibility fell on the CFO. I then reminded them of our organizational structure chart, showing that I was no longer in charge of what the administrative assistant did. They were upset, but one of the younger guys loved what I did. The auditors then strongly suggested that we fire Charlotte. or they'd have to issue their report, stating things were severely misstated. She was finally fired last week, and Tom was issued a significant fine for being the supervisor responsible. I hope they all learned their lesson, and I can hire a competent assistant now. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.